Hi there, and welcome to the Adley 2022. Today, as a group, we're going to be working in Adobe XD, developing an app in which all of you will be creating your own bios, and then we'll go ahead and be linking them to our master page, which is right here. Today, we're just going to take a look right now at all of the different elements as far as the interface. Up here, you obviously have your design, prototype, and share, things that we've used before, with the exception of prototype, which we're going to go over. This is going to be how we link one page to another. Over here, we have our actual artboard, which we are looking at, and that's this one right here. We're going to be creating multiple artboards. Everybody's going to have their own. And like I said, this will be a live document, which means everybody will have their own and be able to work at the exact same time. Up here, we have desktop preview, which is this little play button, which we'll take a look at a little bit later on. Down here, we have our properties menu. So depending on what we click on, we will get a different menu for everything. So each item will have its own, similar to several other of the Adobe softwares. Over here on this side, this is considered our assets menu. So our colors, character styles, also components, which is what you're looking at right here, all these little pieces and bits that make up each of these bios. Down here, we're going to see something very similar to every other program we've used, which is the layers element. And then up here on the side, we will also have a toolbar, which you're going to see several things that are quite similar to Adobe Illustrator, because this does run as far as the elements as a vector format. For step number 2, all we're going to go ahead and be doing is we're going to create a new artboard. And this is where your biography is going to go ahead and live. Everybody will have their own, so we're going to want to make sure that we name them. In order to do this, we're going to go over to our toolbar up here on the left-hand side. And if you scroll down towards the bottom, and if you hover, you're going to notice this one is Artboard. Now, when I click on this, you're going to notice that over here, I'm going to get a list of options, okay, in my properties panel. Now in here, you're going to get a bunch of different examples or different artboard sizes that are preset. And they're all named largely in part by phone or iPad Pros or web. So depending on what we're going for. And in this case, we went ahead right here and you can see on top of this artboard, we used iPhone 13. So the newest one or the 12 Pro Max. So all we're going to do is go ahead and click on that. And you'll notice that it's going to create a new artboard. Now, in order to move it, we can go ahead and click on this arrow and click and hold, and then we can sort of drag our artboard down wherever we want. So that way it's somewhere where it's away from everybody else's, it's not overlapping, and we can work there. Once we've done this, we can go ahead and we're going to go up to the very top here where the title is. We're going to double click and we're going to go ahead and retitle this with our name. Helps if you can spell. There we go. Once you've gone and successfully done that, you can go ahead and click enter, and that will set your artboard title. So that way we know which is which. And this is important because on our home page right here, if I zoom in real quick, you can see everybody has their own square. And this is where we're going to go ahead and be adding our photographs. So that way we can link this photo to our particular artboard with our bio. In step number 3, we're going to go ahead and be picking which template or format we want to go ahead and use. So let me zoom out here really fast. All right, so up here, we've provided you with a bunch of different templates that you guys can pick from. So it's up to you which one you'd like to use. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and use profile number 4 over here. So in order to do this, all I'm going to go ahead and do is click and drag over everything. Just like you would in any other document, for example, like Illustrator in particular. Once we've done that, we can either use edit, copy, edit, paste, or we can use Command or Control C, Command or Control V, and this will create a duplicate. And then we can go ahead and drag it to our actual artboard. Now, a lot of what we're going to be doing is going to be very similar to the Adobe Illustrator program. So a lot of the commands like we just did are going to be very similar to those we've used in other programs for Adobe as well. For example, Photoshop, Illustrator, and the rest of them. So you could also go ahead and click and drag over it. And if you like to, you could hold down the Command key, or the Option key, sorry, and you could create a duplicate of it as well. So it's up to you, however you decide. But that's how we're going to get our copy over to here. And this will be the one that we're going to go ahead and be editing and changing the appearance of to create our bio. For step number 4, we're going to go ahead and be changing some of this type around. So we can go ahead, for example, up here and put our name in. We can also go down here and change all of this other type just by simply editing out, going ahead and typing in new information, whatever it is we'd like to do. Now, the first thing about this is all of these objects, if you remember from Adobe Illustrator, for example, are groups. So when I click on something, for example, you're going to notice that all of these things are together. So when I move one thing, I move all. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Command or Control Z and undo that really fast. So what we're going to want to do is go ahead and ungroup everything. So what we're going to do is click and drag over everything itself, is hold down Command or Control, Shift G, and that will ungroup. And you'll notice all of a sudden I have bounding boxes around everything else, for example, the type as well. This means we can just go ahead and simply click on one thing and be able to select it without having to go within that group. For those of you guys that remember, we did isolation in Adobe Illustrator, which was simply double clicking on something, and that would allow us to go into a group and edit it accordingly. Now, first thing, if we want to change type, like for example up here, we want to put our name, obviously. So we're going to go ahead, double click, and this will allow us to go ahead and change the name. So I'm going to go ahead and put in mine. So I now have that. Now, for example, if I look right here and I click on this type, you'll notice there's this little red dot at the bottom. That means that there is more type than there is in this particular text box. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to drag down this bottom box by clicking and dragging. In this case, it says Teams. And we're just going to go ahead and drag down. You'll notice here's those hot pink guides that automatically show up, smart guides. So we're going to go ahead and drag down just so it's out of the way for the moment. And we're going to expand this type box so that way it allows for all of this to fit. So the first thing we're going to need to do is change the box behind it, which is that light blue color, which you'll notice has zero bearing on the appearance of the text. But when I click on the type box, I can go ahead and click and drag, and this will allow any additional information or type that I need to show up. So we can either increase the size of the type box, or we can go ahead and decrease depending on how much information, and then adjust the appearance according to that. For step number 5, we're going to go ahead and start adding photos to not only our home page above your name in those empty boxes, but as well as on your bios. There's a variety of different locations where you have the opportunity to add any sort of images you'd like. And these are going to work if we use JPEGs or PNGs. We can simply drag and drop. So similar to that, if you've ever used Adobe InDesign, all we need to do is go ahead and open Finder, locate our folder with any sort of photos that we would like to use. For this example, I'm going to go ahead and fill the homepage image with my headshot. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag. You'll notice the box above my name will turn blue. And once I let go, my photo will then be fitted to that actual shape. So any shape that we make can now become a photo frame. Similarly over here on my homepage or my bio, I'm going to go ahead and fill this empty box right here with a photo of me and my son. So right here, I'm going to go ahead and click and hold, and drag and let go. Now, one thing is, if the photo is larger than the artboard, we can figure which part we'd like to put by simply double clicking on the image, similar to what we did in Premiere Pro when the graphic was larger than the actual photo frame. So we're going to go ahead and double click, and you'll notice where it's grayed out is outside of the photo frame, and whatever is nice and bright is exactly what will be showing when we go ahead and exit this mode. So I can click and drag and readjust till I get exactly what I want. I can also scale by clicking and dragging. I don't have to hold the Shift key. It'll maintain proportions on its own. Once I've decided and I'm set on what I have, I can go ahead and simply click outside of it, and then I will now have my photo fitted to that frame. I have 3 other little locations, even things this small we can add photos to. I'm going to go ahead and open my Finder one more time, and I'm going to add other photos of my team members here. So Alex is going to go in, Mr. Arthur is going to go in, and then I have another picture here of a little wildcat that I'm going to add. If I zoom in on this one, let me go back in, Command plus, or Command or Control plus, you'll notice I have a variety of different graphics here from this Illustrator page. So I'm going to go ahead and double click, and I'm going to click and drag. Like I said, it'll maintain proportions. I'm going to fit the one I want to the frame. Once I've done that, I can simply go ahead and click outside, and my photo is now fit. For step number 6, we're going to talk about developing and creating new elements. Now, an element is nothing more than an object. So in this case, for example, these rectangles, this type, these little shapes, for example, anything that you see is basically considered an element. And if we go over here, they'll be under the components tab. You'll be able to see here's a bunch of ones that are already created, and that's because those are partially because of all of these templates that we've put up here for you. And you can take any bit or piece from any one of these. So in order to do this, it's going to function very similar to Adobe Illustrator. In order to create, for example, a box like this, I could simply go ahead and click on it, hold down my Option key to duplicate it, or I'm going to go ahead and delete it. I could also go over here to the rectangle tool, and I could simply click and drag to create a new box. And in this case, I'm going to create a new type box. Now, once I let go, it just creates a rectangle. You'll notice on my properties panel over here on the far right side, I do have fill and stroke down here towards the middle. I also have dimensions and all of the other information related to this particular object that I have selected. So in this case, I wanted to match these, so I'm going to make sure that it doesn't have a border, so I can uncheck this. Now, in order to make the fill the same, I can go ahead and click on the fill color itself right here, and it'll open a color picker. Now, if I want the exact same color, I could simply go over here, click on my eyedropper tool, hover over the color, go ahead and click. And this will automatically fill my rectangle with that same color. Now, if I want to add this color, because I'm going to use it again later, rather than having to use the picker every time, I can go down here and click on this plus symbol, and it'll add this color to my swatch library. Now, once I've gone ahead and done that, I can go over here and click on my selection tool. Once I click off, I can see now that this shape is no longer visible. Notice that it runs off the edge. This artboard is made to the frame or the size of a display. So in order to see the rest of it, I'm going to have to go ahead and extend my actual artboard. Now to do this, I'm going to go ahead and double click on my artboard, and then I'm going to click and drag so that it encompasses this new shape I've created. You'll notice right here I have a dashed line with this right here. This basically means this is now scrollable. So on a screen, I can click and scroll upward, and it'll allow me to see the other type as it's further down. Now, to create type that actually fits inside of this box, we can go ahead, and on the left-hand side in our toolbar, you're going to see that similar T object in the toolbar, and that's type or text. So we can go ahead and click here, and if I want to create just a title, I can go ahead and click, and I could start typing. So for example, let's go ahead and put interests. Now, once I've done that, I can go ahead and click on the black selection arrow, and notice that I have a bounding box around it, meaning it's selected. I can go over here and I can select any sort of font that I would like. One thing that is unfortunate in Adobe XD is it doesn't give us a preview as we hover over the type that we see. So you kind of got to know what you're looking for. Or worst case scenario, if you don't like this and you want to have the exact same type as you have above, it might be in your best interest to go ahead. Let's click on it and delete it. And I'm just going to go ahead and click on this one, Teams, and I'm going to go ahead and copy it. So I'm going to do Command or Control C, Command or Control V. So copy paste. And then I can click, and I'm going to go ahead and drag straight down. And those smart guides will help me line it up exactly where I want it. Then I can simply double click and then change what it says. So in this case, I'm going to change it to interests. Now, the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I am going to add a type box inside of here so I can go ahead and add additional type. So I'm going to click on the type tool, and I'm simply going to go over here and I'm going to click and drag in the space that I want to be able to have type. Once I've done that, I can simply go ahead and start typing whatever it is I might want to do. And obviously I can continue to type all the way down to the bottom where my type box ended. So here you can go ahead and fill in this information as you see fit. For step number 8, we're going to go ahead and start to begin to define the interactions between the things we've created. So in this case, we're going to be linking our photos to our actual bios, and then our bios we're going to link back to the home page. So the first thing we're going to want to go ahead and do is, rather than have these 3 lines up here, I'm going to go and change it to a back arrow. So I'm going to go up here and I am going to look for one with an arrow. So for example, right here, I'm going to go ahead and double click, get inside, select this arrow, Command or Control C. I'm going to go ahead and move back to my page. And then let's zoom in a little. I'm going to press Command V. And here is that arrow. I'm actually going to make it a tad bit bigger. I'm going to go ahead and change its fill to white. And I'm going to move this over. I'm going to go ahead and move it. Once I hold it over, I'm going to delete these lines. And this is going to be the object that is going to link me back to my homepage. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is, once I have that in place, I'm simply going to go up here where you have Design, Prototype, and Share. I'm going to select Prototype. And now I'm going to click on an object. And when I click on an object, you're going to see this little arrow appear. Now this arrow is saying, where do I want to link this particular object to? So when I click on this, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to link it to my page. You'll see the border turns a little bit blue. And now this is connected. And I can look up here and see what's the trigger. So in this case, it's going to be tap. So I'm going to click basically. Otherwise, you have other options where you have keys, drags, voice. And these are just different actions that can activate a particular function. Now, the other thing, we needed one more part, which is to link our page back to the home page. So in order to do that, I'm going to select that little arrow that I created, and I'm going to go ahead and link it back to the home page. So now I have a link, if I click here, to my page from my photo, and then if I click on this, it will now link me back. In step 9, all we're going to go ahead and do is make sure that our prototyping is working correctly. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make sure we're back in our design mode. And then we're going to go up here to the upper right-hand corner where you're going to see the little play symbol or the little triangle, and that's desktop preview. And what's going to happen is when we click this, it's going to give us an example of what it looks like as if it was a functioning web page, or for this case, a functioning web app on our phones. So once we click it, you'll see it pops up. And it's going to act just like it would. So we can scroll. Notice we now have a scroll bar. And in these will be everybody else's photos along with the links to their artboards that have their bios. So once we do that, all we need to do is find who we want to look at, go ahead and click on it. And this will take us to our page with all of our updated information. And again, because we gave it that scrolling effect earlier on, you'll notice we're able to scroll down to see all of the other information that we've added. And then up here at the very top, you'll notice once we go ahead and hover over the back arrow that I've created as my link to take me back to my home page, my little cursor turns into a little hand. So I can go ahead and click on that, and it'll take me right back to the home page. Once I'm sure that all of those things are working correctly, I can go ahead and close this by simply clicking on the X arrow. Now, if for some reason there is an issue in the prototyping, we simply go back, and then we readjust these links to make sure they're acting correctly. Anything else you change will not affect those active links that you've created, those interactions. So don't worry about that. You can go in and change anything else you feel like until you're completely happy with it and willing to share it with everyone else.